There's a strange and haunting truth about human attraction, one that most of us only discover after heartbreak. We think we fall in love because someone feels right, because they make us feel seen, understood, or alive. But often, what draws us in so powerfully is not their perfection, it's their familiarity. It's the way they feel like home, even when that home was once a place of pain. Carl Jung called this phenomenon the psychological magnetism of the unconscious, the invisible gravity that pulls us toward people who mirror our deepest wounds. To Jung, relationships were not merely romantic adventures. They were sacred mirrors, reflecting the parts of ourselves we have not yet learned to face. Every attraction, every heartbreak, every obsession, it all serves a purpose, to show us what's unresolved within us. You've probably felt it before, that electric pull towards someone you can't quite explain. They walk into a room and something inside you just remembers, not consciously, not logically, but viscerally. You know them before you know them. It feels fated, almost cosmic, but that intensity doesn't always mean harmony. More often than not, it means your unconscious has recognized something, a shadow, a familiar pattern, a reflection of a buried emotion that's begging to be healed. Jung believed that we are all seeking wholeness, a reconciliation between the parts of ourselves we show to the world and the ones we keep buried deep within. He called this process individuation, the lifelong journey of becoming whole by integrating the conscious and unconscious. And love, to him, was one of the most powerful forces that could awaken this process. But here's the paradox. We are not drawn to what is good for us. We are drawn to what is unfinished within us. The people who fascinate us, frustrate us, or even break us, they are often carrying pieces of our unhealed story. That's why Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Fate, in this sense, is not some external hand of destiny. It's the inner script we're unconsciously replaying through the people we choose. When someone mirrors our wounds, they awaken the same emotions that shaped us long ago: rejection, abandonment, shame, control, fear, guilt. Yet our mind mistakes this recognition for chemistry. We say, "I feel a spark," but what we're really feeling is our past, reanimated in a new form. That's why the same types of relationships keep showing up in different disguises. You meet someone new, it feels different this time, and yet, months later, the same patterns emerge. The same arguments, the same longing, the same emotional distance. It's not coincidence. It's the psyche trying once again to resolve what it never could before. To Jung, this repetition wasn't a punishment. It was an invitation, a call to awareness. Because only through recognition can healing begin. Every person who mirrors your wounds is, in a strange way, your greatest teacher, even if their lessons come wrapped in pain. When we finally see this pattern for what it is, everything changes. Attraction no longer feels like fate dragging us in circles. It becomes a map of our inner world. We begin to ask deeper questions. What part of me is being reflected here? What am I trying to heal through this connection? What am I still searching for in others that I've yet to find in myself? In this exploration, we will uncover 7 profound reasons why we are drawn to those who mirror our wounds, through the lens of Carl Jung's timeless insight. From the pull of the unconscious, to the dance of projection, to the spiritual hunger for wholeness, we'll explore why love so often feels both divine and destructive at once. Because the truth is, the people who break us open are often the ones who bring us closest to ourselves. And Jung would remind us, it's not about avoiding those who mirror our wounds, but about learning what the reflection is trying to reveal. Reason 1. The pull of the unconscious, when familiarity feels like fate. Carl Jung believed that most of what drives human behavior lies beneath the surface, in the vast ocean of the unconscious. Our conscious mind, the part we identify with, is merely the tip of the iceberg. Beneath it lies everything we've forgotten, denied, or repressed, the memories, emotions, and unmet needs that once shaped us. And though we may think we're choosing our partners freely, Jung would say that our unconscious chooses first. Have you ever met someone who felt strangely familiar, even though you barely knew them? Their voice, their presence, the way they looked at you, it felt like déjà vu. That's not coincidence. That's your unconscious recognizing something. It's the same emotional blueprint that once defined your earliest experiences of love, safety, or pain. If love once meant chasing affection that was never fully returned, you may find yourself magnetically drawn to people who are just out of reach. If love once meant walking on eggshells around unpredictable moods, you may mistake that tension for passion. The psyche doesn't distinguish between what's healthy and what's familiar. It simply seeks completion. It repeats what it knows, not because it wants to suffer, but because it wants to heal. The unconscious mind recreates the past, not to trap us in it, but to give us another chance to respond differently this time. Jung compared this to a kind of psychic gravity. We orbit around people who represent the missing pieces of our story. At first, that pull feels mystical, the kind of chemistry that makes your body remember before your mind can explain it. But what you're remembering isn't the person, it's the pattern. This is why some relationships feel fated, almost destined. We tell ourselves, "I've never felt this way before," when, in truth, we've felt it many times, just with different faces. It's not newness that grips us, it's recognition. The unconscious whispers, "This is your chance to finally get it right. To love without fear. To be seen without hiding. To break the cycle that once defined you." But unless we become conscious of that pull, we end up repeating instead of resolving. We keep reenacting old dynamics. The same rejection, the same longing, the same ache, believing that if we just love harder this time, it'll finally heal. Jung taught that awareness is the first act of liberation. When you realize that your attraction is not just chemistry but communication, your unconscious speaking through emotion, you stop being a puppet of your past. You begin to see the pattern instead of living it. And that's when the magnetic pull of fate begins to lose its grip. Because fate, in Jung's world, isn't something that happens to us, it's something that happens through us until we wake up. Reason number 2. The dance of projection, when we fall in love with our own reflection. Jung once wrote that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But the same is true for what fascinates us, especially in love. When we fall in love, we rarely see the other person as they are. We see them through the shimmering veil of projection, a living screen onto which our unconscious paints its desires, wounds, and ideals. In Jungian psychology, projection isn't deception, it's revelation. It's the psyche's way of showing us what we've lost, what we yearn for, or what we've disowned within ourselves. That's why the beginning of love feels like magic. You don't just meet someone, you remember something. They seem to complete a sentence you didn't realize was unfinished. Their smile feels like an answer to an unspoken question. But what you're really seeing is your own light, refracted through another human being. The tenderness you feel? It's your capacity for love, finally given a mirror. The intensity? It's your longing for reunion with the lost parts of yourself. In Jung's view, this projection isn't a mistake. It's the psyche's attempt at wholeness. It's as if the soul says, "Here, in this person, lies the part of you you've been missing." So you chase them, not just out of desire, but out of an unconscious instinct to reclaim what's yours. Yet, as every love story eventually learns, projection is temporary. The illusion fades, the mirror cracks, and reality begins to show through. That's when the enchantment turns into confusion. You start asking, what happened to the person I fell in love with? Nothing happened to them, they were always there. But the reflection you loved was your own. This is where the real work begins. To love someone not for who you imagine them to be, but for who they truly are, flawed, independent, unknowable, requires that we retrieve our projections. It requires maturity, humility, and the courage to meet both the light and shadow within ourselves. When you withdraw your projection, something miraculous happens. The person standing before you becomes real again, and so do you. The fog of fantasy clears, revealing not perfection, but presence. Not idealization, but intimacy. Most relationships collapse at this point, mistaking disillusionment for failure. But Jung would say this is the moment when love begins its second, deeper life, not as infatuation, but as individuation shared. Because to truly love is to see, not just the reflection of your soul, but the reality of another's. It is to let the other person exist beyond your needs, while still recognizing that every attraction, every ache, every heartbreak, is a message from your own unconscious. In the end, the people who captivate us the most are those who show us to ourselves. And once you understand that, falling in love becomes less about possession and more about awakening. Reason number 3. The wound of abandonment: how early pain shapes adult desire. In the quiet chambers of the human psyche, there lives a wound so deep, so formative, that it colors the way we love for the rest of our lives: the wound of abandonment. Carl Jung believed that no experience shapes the human soul more profoundly than the loss of connection. Whether it's a parent who wasn't emotionally present, a caregiver who left too soon, or a moment of deep loneliness in childhood, the psyche remembers. It records the pain of absence like an echo that never quite fades. This wound doesn't just make us afraid of being left. It makes us hungry for the kind of love that feels unbreakable, eternal, absolute. The kind of love that promises, this time, you will not be forgotten. But here lies the paradox. The deeper the wound, the stronger the pull toward those who will reopen it. Unconsciously, we are drawn to the familiar texture of our first heartbreak. We mistake emotional danger for chemistry. We call it passion, when in truth, it's the nervous system recognizing a pattern, the same rhythm of closeness and withdrawal that defined our earliest experiences of love. Jung might say that our soul returns to the scene of the crime, hoping this time it will end differently. We are not masochists, we are seekers. The child within us is still waiting for the story to change, for someone to stay. So we fall for those who carry the same emotional temperature as the one who first wounded us: distant, unpredictable, intoxicatingly familiar. It's not logic that drives this, it's the unconscious whispering, "Heal it here. Finish what was unfinished." But these relationships rarely heal us, at least not in the way we expect. Instead, they expose the depth of our need, forcing us to face the ache we've spent years avoiding. They strip away the illusion that someone else can fill the void. And though the realization is brutal, it's also the beginning of freedom. Because the truth Jung points toward is this: no external love can heal an internal wound. The person who abandons you now is only the messenger. The real reconciliation must happen within. You must return to that lonely child, the one who learned that love means anxiety, that presence always comes with the threat of loss, and tell them, "I will not leave you again." When that happens, something shifts. The craving for rescuers, redeemers, or unavailable lovers begins to dissolve. You stop chasing love to fill a hole and begin to give love from wholeness. You stop needing others to stay because you've finally stayed for yourself. Jung described this process as a movement toward individuation, the integration of the abandoned parts of the self. It is a rebirth, not in someone else's arms, but in your own awareness. And as painful as it is, the moment you face the wound consciously, it loses its power to choose for you. That's the quiet miracle of healing. The same soul that once attracted those who hurt you begins to attract those who respect you. The same heart that once clung out of fear learns to connect out of choice. The same pain that once defined your story becomes the doorway to your awakening. So if you've ever asked yourself, "Why do I keep loving those who hurt me?" the answer is both tragic and transcendent. Because your soul is still searching for the version of you that was left behind. And the moment you turn inward to find them, the pattern ends. Reason number 4. The power of familiar pain: why we mistake chaos for love. Carl Jung once said that, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Nowhere is this more evident than in the way we love. Many of us, without realizing it, mistake the feeling of familiar pain for the feeling of true connection. When love is calm, stable, and safe, it feels foreign, almost dull. But when love is unpredictable, intense, and full of emotional highs and lows, something inside us comes alive. We call it chemistry. We call it passion. But in truth, it is our nervous system recognizing a pattern it has known all along. Chaos feels like home. Jung believed that the psyche clings to what it knows, even when what it knows is suffering. So, if your earliest experiences of affection were fused with anxiety, if love once meant walking on eggshells, begging for attention, or being needed only in crisis, then stability might feel wrong. It doesn't register as love. It registers as emptiness. This is the cruel trick of the unconscious. It mistakes familiarity for safety. We chase people who make us feel the same confusion, the same adrenaline, the same uncertainty that surrounded our earliest attachments, because deep down we equate that tension with aliveness. And so, we fall into cycles where we mistake intensity for intimacy. We confuse longing with connection. We confuse pain with depth. But this isn't love, it's repetition. It's the psyche's attempt to relive the wound, to control it this time, to master what once overpowered us. Jung would say that this repetition is not punishment, it's a message. The unconscious keeps presenting us with mirrors, people who recreate the same dynamic, until we finally recognize the pattern and break it consciously. When we begin to awaken, this realization is sobering. You start to see that the people you called soulmates were, in truth, your soul's teachers. They came not to complete you, but to confront you, to reveal what still needs healing inside you. That's the moment you stop asking, "Why do I always attract the wrong people?" and start asking, "What part of me still believes this is love?" Because real love, mature, grounded, soul-level love, is not chaotic. It doesn't leave you guessing, begging, or breaking. It is steady, consistent, and kind. It nourishes rather than drains. But to receive that kind of love, you must first become comfortable with peace. You must rewire the part of you that equates chaos with connection. You must learn to sit in stillness without reaching for emotional turbulence just to feel alive. That's what individuation demands, a shift from the unconscious compulsion to the conscious choice. To say, "I no longer need pain to prove that it's love." And here's the beautiful paradox. When you heal that wound, the passion doesn't die. It deepens, because now, intensity no longer comes from fear, it comes from truth. The fire between two conscious souls is not the blaze of drama, but the steady flame of mutual recognition. So the next time you feel the pull toward someone who stirs up chaos in your soul, pause and ask yourself, is this love, or is it memory? Am I drawn to them, or to the pain they remind me of? And if the answer is pain, walk away. Not in anger, but in awakening. Because once you stop confusing the familiar with the right, you free yourself to experience the kind of love that doesn't hurt to hold. Reason number 5. The magnetic pull of the shadow, why we're attracted to what we deny. Carl Jung said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." But he also warned that what first draws us to another person is not always love. Sometimes, it's the recognition of our own disowned self. The shadow, in Jung's words, is the part of us we repress, reject, or hide, the impulses, desires, and emotions that don't fit our image of who we should be. We banish them to the unconscious, pretending they don't exist. But the psyche has a law. What you refuse to face within, you will meet without. And so, the shadow finds its way back to you, through other people, through attraction, through obsession, through love. The ones who captivate us most deeply often embody the qualities we have denied in ourselves. The confident person who intimidates you may mirror your own buried power. the free spirit who defies convention, may reflect your repressed longing for liberation. The emotionally unavailable partner may mirror your own avoidance of vulnerability. This is psychological magnetism in its rawest form. You're not just drawn to the person, you're drawn to the part of yourself they awaken. But here lies the paradox. When you project your shadow onto another, you don't love them as they are, you love what they represent. You see in them what you've lost, or what you've never allowed yourself to be. That's why these connections often feel transcendent and tormenting at the same time. You're not just falling for someone, you're colliding with your own unconscious. Jung believed that the shadow must be integrated, not destroyed. The goal is not to purge it, but to make it conscious, to hold the darkness without fear, to see in it not evil, but energy. So when we fall for those who embody our denied traits, the real invitation is not to possess them, but to reclaim ourselves. To ask, what part of me is asking to be seen through this person? When you explore that question honestly, the spell begins to break. The obsession softens. The projection fades. You begin to see the other person not as a missing piece, but as a mirror, a reflection of your own unlived life. This is why some relationships burn with such impossible intensity. They are alchemical. They force both souls to confront what they've buried. In Jungian terms, such encounters are not mistakes. They are sacred catalysts. They bring the unconscious into the light. But if you remain unaware, the same magnetism that could transform you will instead consume you. Because when you love someone as a substitute for your own wholeness, love turns into possession. You want them to make you feel complete, yet they never can, because that power belongs only to you. Integration begins the moment you stop saying, "They complete me," and start realizing, "They reveal me." When you accept your own shadow, when you own your anger, your ambition, your sensuality, your fear, the magnetic pull toward toxic mirrors begins to fade. You no longer need another person to carry your unlived self. You've made peace with it. And in that moment, love transforms. It becomes choice, not compulsion. Connection, not projection. Wholeness, not hunger. The ones who once held power over your soul lose their spell. Not because they've changed, but because you have. You no longer seek your reflection in others, because you've finally found it within. Reason number 6. The archetype of the healer, why we're drawn to those we think we can fix. Deep within many of us lives the archetype Jung called the wounded healer, the one who was once broken and now seeks redemption by mending others. Those who have suffered deeply often carry an intuitive empathy. They can sense pain like a pulse beneath the surface of others. But what begins as compassion can easily become a trap, a mission to save others as a way of avoiding one's own wounds. When we meet someone who is lost, fractured, or emotionally unstable, something ancient within us awakens. We think, if I can heal them, maybe my pain will finally make sense. But this isn't love, it's projection. We see our younger, broken selves in them. We love them with the tenderness we never received. Jung warned that this form of love is dangerous because it blurs the line between care and control. It feels noble, but it often ends in depletion, the healer drained, the wounded untouched. The real path of the healer is not to fix others, but to embody the healing they seek. To recognize that love cannot substitute for therapy, that empathy is not rescue, and that no one's transformation can substitute for your own. When you release the need to heal someone, you finally give both of you permission to grow. You stop playing savior and start becoming whole. And in that wholeness, you attract not patients, but partners. Reason number 7. The alchemy of awareness. How conscious love breaks the cycle. Carl Jung believed that, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And when it comes to love, to attraction, heartbreak, and repetition, this is the ultimate truth. Every person who has entered your life was, in some way, an emissary of your unconscious. They came to reveal something unseen, a wound, a longing, a forgotten part of your soul. The patterns that once felt like punishment were, in reality, invitations. Invitations to wake up. This is the alchemy of awareness. The moment when pain becomes teacher and love becomes mirror. When you stop asking, "Why do they do this to me?" and begin asking, "What are they showing me about myself?" That shift, from blame to awareness, is where transformation begins. You start to see that every heartbreak was never about rejection, but redirection. Every betrayal was a lesson in boundaries. Every illusion was a call to see reality. And slowly, something profound happens. The compulsion fades. The need to chase, to fix, to repeat dissolves. You begin to love differently. Not from fear, not from emptiness, but from clarity. Conscious love isn't the absence of passion. It's the presence of awareness. It's knowing your triggers, your shadows, your needs, and choosing to love anyway, but without losing yourself. When you love from that place, the patterns that haunted you finally end. Because you're no longer a character trapped in your story, you've become its author. This is Jung's final truth about love. The purpose of relationships is not to make you happy, it's to make you whole. And once you understand that, love stops being a battlefield and becomes a mirror of your awakening. The mirror breaks, and we finally see. In the end, every relationship that stirs us to our core, whether it blooms or burns, is never just about the other person. It's about us, about the unhealed fractures within, the forgotten child who still aches to be seen, the dormant energies that yearn to awaken. The people who mirror our wounds are not punishments or coincidences. They are catalysts. They arrive as mirrors, stay as lessons, and leave as transformations. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And that's precisely what these magnetic, fated connections do. They expose what has been quietly steering us all along. Through them, the unconscious becomes visible. Our patterns surface, our projections crumble, and we are forced to confront the truth that the love we sought outside was a reflection of the love we withheld within. When the mirror finally cracks, when the illusion fades, the pain can be immense. But in that breaking, something sacred is revealed: awareness. We begin to see not only who we are, but why we are drawn the way we are. We stop chasing completion through another, and begin the journey toward our own wholeness. The faces that haunt us, the ones we can't forget, they were never random encounters. They were messengers from the unconscious, asking us to look deeper, to remember, to heal. Because true love, in Jung's sense, is not about finding your missing half. It's about becoming whole enough that love no longer fills a void, it flows freely, as recognition rather than rescue. And once you reach that place, you realize something profound. No one ever really mirrors your wounds again. They mirror your light.